Welcome back to Joe Sins for Elvis Photos. Glad to be here. I didn't get a chance to do a video yesterday. I was on Music Row in Nashville at Sienna Studios doing a project for a songwriter. And I'm trying to find where I was at in the Elvis in June book. I feel like I marked, there we go. Here's the mark. I entered at the bottom of page 145. Thank you to you members that have been long-standing members, brand new members that have signed up. Appreciate you. Those that have left me super thanks. Any of those that have bought some of those funny little mugs and t-shirts and stuff that I have below the video. Let's get back to Elvis, back to defending Elvis, back to loving Elvis. So let's continue here. Let's see here. Okay, so June is talking about jumping off of Lamey's Bridge at the Chabofa River, I believe. Can you believe I used to die from here? It's high, ain't it? I said, knowing what a stupid stunt it was. And then Elvis said, no, I can't. Were you crazy, June? It was during my young and foolish years, the years when you think you're indestructible, and I would never do it again, said June. How deep is that water? Elvis asked. No one knows. They have never been able to find the bottom. Damn, June, you had to be crazy, he said, dropping a rock over the side of the bridge. Then I took him down Biloxi's main drag, Howard Avenue. The avenue was constructed of red bricks and still had the old streetcar tracks running down the center, even though streetcars were way before my time. Does anybody know whether that Howard Avenue still has those red bricks and the streetcar tracks? I'd sure like to travel down there and check it out. You know, kind of walk in some of the footsteps of Elvis and, of course, June. Unlike our day-long tour of Memphis, the city of Biloxi, surrounded by water on three sides, could be seen in less than an hour. When we returned to Gulf Hills, local artist Harry Reeks was waiting to do a charcoal sketch of Elvis and anyone else who wanted to pose. Now, Elvis sat me in the chair across from the artist, wind-blown hair and all, insisting I go first. Running my fingers through my hair, I asked Mr. Reeks if he would be so kind as to comb it with his charcoal, and he went along. Elvis, watching his every stroke, thought it was a good likeness, but insisted that I was much prettier. That's a gentleman, right? I blushed when Mr. Reeks apologized, saying it was hard to capture that much beauty. I watched in amazement as Mr. Reeks caught perfectly the famous sulking look on Elvis's handsome face. I took both sketches home with me, planning to have them framed someday. Now, Harry Reeks went on and became famous on the Gulf Coast for his work as a sculptor, as well as a painter. It wasn't until I was looking through my scrapbook after Elvis's death that I discovered the charcoal sketches still in good condition and took them to be framed. Now they hang side by side in my home where everybody can see them. We then spent the evening with my mother and Eddie at the Pink Pony Lounge. Red took my mother for a twirl on the dance floor while Eddie took his turn on the bongo drums. Bongo drums. Boom, boom. It's thanks to Mama, a real shutterbug, that I have the most of the pictures reproduced in this book. After Elvis had done his bit on the piano, and we'd sung every song we knew, we left the Pink Pony and went back to the Hack House. Eddie sat around shooting the breeze with the boys while Elvis gave Mama a personal tour of his summer hideaway. Before we all said goodnight, I not only had permission to go to Florida, but a big hug to go along with it. Oh, I feel like we probably read that, but sorry. It's been a while since I've been in this book. Here's some photos. In fact, I know I must have read some of that, or maybe I didn't. We're just going to keep reading from here, okay? I'll do a couple more pictures and we'll continue reading. If we go over a section again, no big deal, because we all love hearing about Elvis, and sometimes we don't hear something the first time, or maybe I don't read it right the first time. Okay. So right now we are in chapter, a lot of pictures, I got to show more next time. Chapter 18, Down South. Elvis's parents were due in that afternoon, and the biggest part of our day was spent going through the hack house with a fine-tooth comb, making sure we had all of our belongings. Elvis had reserved the entire villa to accommodate his parents as well as himself and his entourage. Elvis and I walked hand in hand back to the house for one final check. Standing on the balcony, he held me in his arms and kissed me gently. I gotta show you this picture of June. It says a portrait that Elvis asked to have June have made. This place is full of beautiful memories, June. Maybe next time, by next time this year, I might even own it. And then we'll never have to say goodbye, he said, kissing me again. So I get the feeling, you know, Elvis spent a lot of time with June. We know he had other girlfriends. You know, we know that he dated Dixie Locke as well. And of course, we all know the Lucy the Barbin book that I've read, and other girlfriends that that he kind of dated around that time. But I do believe, that Elvis had genuine feelings for June. You know, I can't imagine that you would spend so much time with somebody, their mother, bring your mother down and spend time if he didn't have, you know, maybe some plans to be with her. I mean, what do y'all think about that? I apologize for the break there. I had to do some work real quick. So I'm back here. But like I said, I can't imagine that Elvis didn't have those feelings for June. That might have been the big feelings that he felt like maybe I could marry June, you know. And I think Elvis was, I don't want to say guilty of being a hopeless romantic, but I think that he looked for that in everybody that he was ever with. And he saw certain parts of everybody that he did want to be with forever. Anyway, so after getting everything put away in the villa, Elvis and I stayed out on the front lawn so he could see the pink Cadillac as it rounded the curve. See, he was anxious to see his mother. It was the first time that they'd been together in weeks, and tomorrow was his last day before going to Florida, and he wanted the four of us to spend the day together doing something different. Now, my grandmother lived in New Orleans, and I knew lots of interesting places to visit there. He liked my idea, and he was going to suggest it to his parents. Now, Elvis's face lit up, his entire face, as he watched the pink Cadillac round the curve. After all the hugs and kisses, we helped him get settled in the villa, and then the four of us walked to the hotel restaurant for a bite to eat. They'd had breakfast before leaving Memphis, but Mrs. Presley, in a hurry to get to Biloxi, didn't want Vernon to even stop for gas, much less something to eat. Right away, Mrs. Presley started teasing me about having some kind of spell over Elvis. He used to come home between shows, but now he acts like this is his home. What have you done to my little boy, June? He can't wait to get back to Biloxi. There's another thing there. I mean, I know that there's a lot of folks that believe that June was the one that Elvis should have been with. And of course, we all know the story about June, which I don't want to spoil it. She'll tell it in the book, but I did a video on it, how the relationship ended, which is kind of sad, but at the same time, Elvis wasn't really mature enough at that point, and really, let's just say this, there wasn't cell phones. Schedules were different. Elvis was a night owl, June wasn't. The communication just wasn't there. All right. So June said, "It's not me, Mrs. Presley. It's the Gulf Coast. It has a way of making people return." I said that boasting it about my beautiful hometown. You can't fool me, June. I know better, she said with a sly smile. When Elvis mentioned our plans to spend the day in New Orleans, Mrs. Presley, tired out from the long drive, didn't seem very enthusiastic. I suggested we cancel our plans and just take it easy, but she wouldn't hear of it. She'd been wanting to visit New Orleans for a long time and promised to be as good as new after a night's sleep. Now, the pink Cadillac offered more room, but also drew more attention, so Elvis decided we'd take the less conspicuous Lincoln. The ride alone was a new experience for them. Now, I'd made the same trip hundreds of times, but this time it was different. Through the eyes of Elvis's mother, I saw the uniqueness and beauty that I'd always taken for granted, as if for the first time. It began with 27 miles of beautiful white sand beach, the longest man-made beach in the world. At the time, the coastline of Mississippi had some of the finest homes. Now today, only half of these homes remain. The other half didn't survive the devastating winds of Hurricane Camille back in 1969. When we got to Pass Christian, Mississippi, the area that was later hit hardest by the storm, Elvis slowed the car. He slowed the car so his mother could get a better look at all the antebellum homes. She was oohing and awing over different ones, asking Vernon if he'd like to live in a big house like that someday. Now, she was getting no response from Vernon. And we know why. Vernon didn't have the money for a house like that. And I don't know if they knew that Elvis would start becoming as famous and make as much money as he did. So he wasn't about to set her up for disappointment. And sitting on the edge of her seat, leaning forward between me and Elvis, I asked Elvis to stop the car so I could change seats with his mom. But she insisted the view from the back was just as good as the view from the front. Mr. Presley's interest was finally aroused when he reached the Bay St. Louis, Mississippi. He was curious about the signs on several gift shops in the area. Baby alligators for sale. Now, Elvis had stopped on one of our previous trips, but stopped again so his dad could see the tiny reptiles for himself. Some of them were no more than 5 inches long. Wow, baby alligators? I never heard of that. We learn a new thing every day here at the Rare Elvis Photos page. Hey, by the way, I am going to put back all the songs that I did as tributes to Elvis. I'm going to start a new channel. It's going to be called Joe Sin's Rare Elvis Photos Music. And the channel's mainly going to have probably me doing the Elvis tribute songs. But yeah, it's something y'all have asked me to do, and I apologize. You have to kind of own the content that you put on your channel, or you get flagged for copyright violations. So anyhow, that's kind of why the Elvis and the Legends page kind of is changing around. But I will get them put back on. I love Elvis, and I know that y'all love Elvis. So when I sing these songs, I'm singing them with some emulation for sure. Because how can you sing an Elvis song without feeling like you're in his shoes a little bit and trying to sing with emotion? But at the same time, it sounds a little like me as well. Anyhow, I just want to let you know that. Be on the lookout for it. I'll probably start putting it in the subjects of the videos, but it's going to be probably at Joe Sin's Rare Elvis Photos Music. It's going to be sent. It'll be kind of like a second channel with the same name. All right. So, Mrs. Presley said, "They're adorable, but what do you do when they get big?" "You run for your life, Mama," Elvis answered. The alligators later became an endangered species and were no longer sold as pets. So I can imagine a mini alligator. So there's going to be some mean people that want to attack them. You know, those kind of people that are like that. Anyways. Travelers on Highway 90, the only route between Biloxi and New Orleans, made a traditional stop always at the White Kitchen restaurant to have a slice of their favorite pie. The menu listed 6 different varieties of cream pies. Now Elvis, unable to decide between them all, ordered a slice of each. I think I get a little of that from Elvis. My wife jokes around sometimes. When we go to a restaurant, I order sometimes 3-4 different things. Riding through the Regalettes, Mr. Presley perked up again when I told him that most of the baby alligators that we'd seen there were probably born right there. He was straining his eyes, trying to catch a glimpse of Mama or the Papa Gator. Houses and fishing camps were built on both sides of the highway, running through the bayous, the bayous, not the bayous, the bayous and swamplands of Louisiana. Now, little did we know that Elvis would soon be filming King Creole on location right here and using one of these camps in the movie. That's a bit sad, in a way, if you know the history of Elvis and June. And, of course, stay tuned if you don't. The fact that he came back there and filmed, and they weren't together anymore. Highway 90 turned into Chef Mentor Highway when we entered the New Orleans city limits. Elvis was now on familiar ground and decided to make a quick trip to show his parents Pontchartrain Beach. He put on his hat and sunglasses, and we walked the midway without incident. Mrs. Presley seemed to be tired, so they rested on a bench overlooking the Lake Pontchartrain, while Elvis and I went for a quick ride on the Zephyr. He wanted to throw a few baseballs as well, but I reminded him that the day belonged to his mom and his dad, and Pontchartrain Beach was not on the itinerary. We can always come back some other time, okay, June said. Okay, June, you're the boss, but only for today. Mrs. Presley and I took Elvis by the hand and had to practically drag him from his favorite playground. We drove slowly down Bourbon Street so the Presleys could see a little of the world-famous French Quarter. Mrs. Presley disapproved of the scantily clad dancers in every bar clearly visible from the street, but she did enjoy walking through Jackson Square and seeing all the artists displaying their wares. Now, we know New Orleans these days, well, I took my family through it. Yeah. How long ago was it? 10 years ago? We were on a radio tour for one of our singles, Muscadine, and we stopped and went down to New Orleans after a station in Mississippi. And boy, it smelled horrible. And of course, there were ladies of the night walking during the daytime all through the streets too. I can see even back then where she would disapprove of what she saw. Now, no trip to the city would be complete without stopping at one of the two open-air coffee shops in the French market, serving only café au lait. I don't know how to say this. Café au lait. I'll spell it so y'all know what it says. C-A-F-A, so cafe, A-U, and then L-A-I-T. And beignets, little donuts, dusted with sugar. Once we were settled with our coffees and donuts, we talked about New Orleans. Miles and miles of levees surrounded the city and its neighboring parishes, protecting them from the waters of the Mississippi River and Lake Pontchartrain. We all know what happened during Katrina, didn't we? Those levees got breached or broke. What a horrible disaster that was. Standing at the base of the levee, when the river is at its highest point, it's possible to see a gigantic ship steaming down the river right over your head. Elvis's mom found it hard to believe when I told her that the river was only a few yards from the coffee shop. She had to climb the many steps up the side of the levee to see for herself. Now, we were all covered with powdered sugar, but didn't realize it until we started up the stairs. I want a powdered donut now. I am a powdered donut, some coffee, and some milk. Not just one, but both. So I can have some hot coffee with a powdered sugar donut, and then dunk it in some milk and have a bite there. We can all wish for what we want, right? I ain't gonna get no donut right now. I'm in my garage reading, but I'm craving a powdered donut. And a lemon field, actually. What's your favorite donut? Y'all like donuts? Imagine some of y'all do. Maybe most of y'all do. Lemon filled is my absolute favorite. And I don't even mind plain donuts, but lemon filled first and foremost. Those powdered ones are just too messy, but they're tasty. But lemon filled, number one for me. Now, with me on one arm and his mother on the other, Elvis was smiling as if he owned the world. I don't know what I do to deserve this, but Lord, I'm thankful. Elvis said that, briefly raising his eyes to the heaven, then kissing us both on top of our heads. Me too, I whispered, feeling on top of the world. Elvis and his dad left us resting on top of the levee and walked back to pick up the car. Our next stop was the Audubon Park Zoo. Still wearing his hat and sunglasses, Elvis had made it through the day so far without one person recognizing him. So, Elvis was in disguise. That's important to notate, since the book that happened 10 years before this book, which was the Are You Lonesome Tonight, Lucy DeBarman, talks about Elvis going in places in hat and sunglasses in disguise and not being recognized. And a lot of people said, oh, there's no mention in history about it. Well, guess what? One of the most trusted and believed people in Elvis's life, June, mentions it 10 years after Are You Lonesome Tonight was published. And we know June didn't copy it. This happened. That was what Elvis had to do. That's what you did when you were famous. You just had to put on disguises. And Elvis having a love for the movies and acting, you know that he wanted to dress up like Caruso and other people, just to emulate them, as even almost a funny thing to be in their footsteps in a sense. But all right. So Elvis had made it through the day so far without one person recognizing him using those hat and sunglasses. He was all smiles, watching his parents holding hands and strolling through the park like two young lovers. Look at these two. We must be contagious, he said, giving my hand a squeeze. We were laughing and watching the antics of the monkeys, baboons, and orangutans when a teenage girl tapped Elvis on the shoulder. Oh, there we go. At first, we thought he'd been recognized and that she wanted his autograph. She smiled, handed Elvis her camera, and asked if he wouldn't mind taking a picture of her with her two friends. Now, Elvis took the camera, listened closely to her instructions about which button to press, and patiently waited for them to pose. They thanked him and then went on their merry way, never knowing who'd even snapped that shutter. Well, they know now. Hey, little girl who asked that guy to take a picture at the zoo. Not a little girl anymore, but if you're watching this, that was Elvis. You and your two friends. With the humidity near 100% and the 90-degree plus temperature, we were happy to skip the rest of the attractions and go back to the air-conditioned car. Elvis drove aimlessly around the city, pretending to know exactly where he was going. The Presleys enjoyed seeing the streetcars, an unfamiliar sight, plentiful back then, both on St. Charles Avenue and Canal Street. No one bothered to question our whereabouts until we were on the outskirts of New Orleans, in the city of Metairie, Metairie, Metairie or Metairie, Metairie, probably Metairie. We've been riding forever. Are we still in the same city, Miss Presley asked as we were passing a large cemetery. Now she was impressed with all the rows and rows of beautiful tombs and statuary and asked Elvis to drive through. Now reluctantly, he turned the car around. He stopped the car so she could read the dates on some of the more elaborate tombs. Some of the inscriptions dated back to the Civil War. Now, this was not Elvis's idea of a fun place to be, but he had to admit it was truly beautiful. I've never seen so many tombs in all my life, but where are all the graves? Said Miss Presley, thinking there must be another section. There are no graves, Mrs. Presley. New Orleans is 4 feet below sea level, making underground burial impossible. Now we got to think about that. Yes, it's 4 feet under sea level. I guess maybe the water table probably must run pretty high underneath the ground, so close to the ground. But you would think that you're away from the sea, you should still be able to dig down and bury somebody. But it must flood all the time, and then that would... Yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting. I get it. I've seen it, and it is gorgeous. And of course, I've seen plenty of shows and movies where the cemeteries there in New Orleans uh, are portrayed. It's very interesting. Very, what's the word? Macabre. Macabre. Kind of like scary, spooky sort of thing. Uh, June said, Gladys, you're amazing. How in the world do you know so much about so many things? She said, shaking her head in disbelief. I just smiled proudly, not telling her that the sea level issue was the major reason my grandmother had recently purchased burial plots in Biloxi rather than New Orleans. She didn't want to burden the family with the added expense of a tomb. Well, no wonder I haven't seen any graves. Now, I don't like the idea of being put in the ground, though. I'd much rather be put in one of these, she said, modestly pointing to one of the less expensive, smaller tombs. Stop talking foolish, Mama. Let's get out of here, Elvis said, looking for an exit. That's what he didn't like. He didn't like the idea of his mama dying or his dad dying. Death is a part of life, son, said Gladys. It's something we all got to do sooner or later. And it don't hurt none to talk about it, she said, touching Elvis on the shoulder. Well, I don't want to talk about it, okay? I've got a lot of living to do, and so do you. We're just getting started. Is anybody hungry? Let's go get something besides donuts and pie. I want some real food, he said, added that, changing the subject. Elvis took the nearest exit and was immediately confused about which way to turn. He would never admit being lost, but we were. Getting lost in a big city is one thing, but getting lost in a big city during rush hour had us all on the edge of our seats. New Orleans was, and still is, known for its wild and crazy drivers. Yeah, that and Memphis. Elvis had to be right at home. Maybe Memphis wasn't crazy then, but good Lord, it's crazy now. When you go visit Graceland, you be very careful. There are people that literally will try to drive on the side near the center dividers, drive on the right side and pass you as fast as they can go while you're sitting still. Crazy. And yeah, anyways, I mean, you still want to go see Grayson, but be careful. Yeah, don't throw your hands up at people over there while you're driving, or you might, bad things will happen there too, probably. All right. We're almost done reading today. I wanted to read a little longer if I possibly could. Spent the day singing yesterday. Did 6 vocals and 6 background harmony parts. And then I came home and did vocals on another song that I wrote actually for myself to sing. So, voice is a little tired. You can probably hear it. But I tell you what, it helps me talk like Johnny Cash a little bit more. When my voice is tired, Junie, my wife, June, not June, Nico, always told me, Johnny, you got to rest your voice a little while. Anyhow, so they're lost in New Orleans. Elvis proved himself a real champ behind the wheel, though. He had us shutting our eyes on several close calls. Thanks to his driving skill and a great sense of direction, he had us back on familiar ground an hour after leaving the cemetery. Now, by this time, we were all starving. He drove straight to Martin Brothers Restaurant, another traditional stop for travelers on Highway 90. As soon as he turned off the car, we all let out a sigh of relief. Now, Martin Brothers was famous for the New Orleans-style po' boys, a type of hoagie sandwich made famous in the South. Having stopped there once before on one of our trips to Pontchartrain Beach, Elvis was anxious for his parents to try one of the delicious sandwiches. Reading the menu listing 6 different varieties, Elvis, as usual, couldn't make up his mind and ordered one of every kind. The waitress smiled, knowing it was a lot of food for 4 people. Well, we can always take the leftovers home, Mrs. Presley said when the food came, looking at the table filled with foot-long sandwiches. I sure hope so. With 6 feet of sandwiches, we should have some left over, I said. Yeah, so we're not going to get through this chapter. We're going to stop right there. I'm going to go ahead and fold the page over. We're on page 153 for all of you that might have the hardback. Yeah. thanks so much again. Thanks for reading. Thanks for watching. Thanks for the comments. Um, hopefully work slows down a little bit and I can get to reading some of your comments, answering some of them like I've done so much in the past. Really want to get back to it. I miss y'all very much. You know, when you get out of the routine of something, and of course I still have a lot of mixing to do on the record and some more vocals, but I've done the bulk of the work, which is why I've been kind of non-existent for 30 days. It's hours and hours of mixing, and then you go listen to a version, go back and remix parts, listen to the version again, and in the car on 2 different speakers, mixing more. So not only am I writing and producing them, but I'm mixing them, and it's like wearing 4 different hats because you got to have different ears. You've got the artist ears, and artists like to hear the voice out front, but then you've got to mix it properly in the mix because if it's too loud, anyways. Some of y'all know what I'm talking about. TCB, TLC, till next time. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. Thanks for the likes. Thanks for the shares. If you made it to the end, let me know. Made it to the end. Let's do a term. Let's do Gladys. All right. Till next time.